In this DVD we follow gamekeepers in their pursuit of foxes, and controlling them with terriers, bolting them to guns.
We're looking at fox control since making this, and just before we made this there's been a lot of changes in the laws and also techniques and methods and equipment. I can remember the early days before I became a keeper and going out with the keepers where I used to work. We went across this field with this huge lamp, and we just picked up a little set of eyes in the distance. It looked like miles away. It's probably about 200 or 300 yards away, if not a few longer. And he started squeaking with his hand. And I could not believe how quick this fox just bounded across the field. I watched it jump the lamp, because I was on the lamp at the time. I was under strict instructions to keep the lamp just above so in the outer beam you could just see it coming. And when he gave me the drop it, I dropped the lamp on top of it, and it was with a 2-2 Hornet centre fire, and he dropped it about 8 yards in front of me. And it just was the most incredible thing that I'd seen, when it comes to fox control. And that was how I saw it. That was how, up until about 3 or 4 years ago, that was how all the nighttime lamping of foxes was done. But over the years, a lot more people are doing it, which is great. But with the foxes now, with the lamp, if you was to shoot and miss one, the chances are that you'd never get that opportunity again. And then along come the digital world, night vision, night scopes, day-night scopes, thermal imaging. So now, unfortunately, for the poor old lamp, it's been consigned to history. And the new method now of going round in the dark, looking across the fields with a thermal image, picking up your intended victim, and just squeaking it in whichever way, still by hand. That's still a method we use by now, but squeaking it in what seems total darkness, but you're seeing it as clear as anything through the thermal image. And your rifle and scope's ready, IR comes on, there it is right in the middle of your scope, and bang. The good thing about today's method now with the scope and the thermal image spotter is I've missed foxes and they just have no idea where the bullets come from, and they mooch about, probably thinking, I don't think I should be standing here, but quite not sure. But it gives you that opportunity to quickly load up and take a second shot. So it is a huge step forward in the control of foxes. In those days, foxes were so cunning, so wary of man. When we used to have fox drives, everything used to be meticulously planned. We'd meet up away from the wood. The old keepers one would be puffing on a fag and one would be throwing up grass to get the wind direction, and they'd work out where this particular wood had to be driven to, always with the wind, so the scent of the standing guns was blowing away from the fox coming towards them. And you'd be walked out by a keeper and he would just point to your spot. You stood there, you never made a sound, you never moved. And at a allotted time, because obviously it's before phones and radios, at say 10 o'clock, we all had to be in position because the drive would start. You'd hear a couple of shots up the front end with the beaters, and 9 times out of 10, within seconds, you'd hear a shot at the front end, because the foxes were so wary of man. But today, I think, with the development of housing estates and the urban population sort of drifting out in the countryside, foxes have become a lot more tamer and acceptable of man. That's using a shotgun, good old Browning Maxes, stoked up with Ely Alpha Max. I've shot Ely Alpha Max a long time. When I first came into it, it was the favoured cartridge of the old keepers, and I've just stuck with it, and you know, they do the job comprehensively. You know, when it's breaking out at a distance, you've had the shot and you just see it roll over. It is a wow moment sometimes, but normally you hope to get them anywhere between 30 and 50 yards, and the cartridges will do the job. One of the other ones, you know, another way of controlling is with harvest. We're in close contact with the combine drivers, and you know, they understand what goes on, what that they need to be controlled, and if they see something in the corn, they'll give us a shout. So then we pitch up, one either end of the field, and then we just stand there. You know, and as the corn gets taken down, you know, the cover becomes smaller and smaller, gives us a bigger area to cover, and we do account for quite a few like that, you know, through the summer. This year, haven't seen so many in the harvest because I think it's just purely and simply been too hot. You know, with the drought and the summer, I think it's the first time that I can remember on here where from day one of harvest right to the end, they never stopped. They just cut every single day. Even when they had a little rain shower, a little tiny rain shower, it stopped them for an hour, but they were going again in the afternoon. And I just think it's been too hot. We have had the odd one, but not as many as what we normally do. So I mean, that's another good method, another good way of you know, keeping these pests down.
Geoff also uses the modern version of an age-old fox control tool, the snare.
When I first came into keepering, it was a locking snare. And then we've moved on to where we are today, which is the holding device, where if it's a non-target species, it will break, and, you know, set correctly, virtually everything that I've caught in these is still very much alive in the morning, and then they're dispatched by the keeper on their rounds. So, you know, there has been a serious development in the snares as we knew to the holding device that we know today. But like I say, it's not just keepers that use these. You know, a lot of hill farmers need these as well because, you know, they have to protect their livelihood as well.
Well, sure will.
I do have conversations with people that just don't like what we do. You know, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. But people need to understand, you know, if you want a thriving wildlife in the countryside, you have to protect them. You know, take the curlew, for instance. You know, a lot of the curlews go on the grouse moors and the moorlands, you know, for their nesting time. There's no point. The most vulnerable time of their life is when they're sitting on a clutch of eggs, you know, or they've got young chicks, you know, and a curlew at the moment is, you know, a red listed species, you know, and it needs to be protected. And the only way you can protect it is to take out its number one enemy out, which is a fox. So there's no point making an area real lovely and wonderful to attract birds to come in to nest and then don't do nothing to protect them while they're nesting. You know, that just seems pointless. Yeah. You know, so controlling of, in my opinion, number one predator, the fox, goes a huge way for the conservation of land and land management of the countryside.
To find out more about Browning guns, Ely Hawk cartridges and Jack Pike clothing, follow the links in the description below. And for prices and availability on fox shooting kit from dealers all over the country, go to kitfinder.co.uk.